Welcome to The Kingstonian, a podcast that profiles individuals who are passionate about what they do for a living, about what organization they belong to, or simply passionate about the community they are a part of. Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Dave Cunningham. Obviously, government has played a major role during the COVID-19 pandemic, government at all levels. Representatives spend a lot of time looking after the needs of their constituents. In this episode, we focus on the municipal level and profile the councillor from Collins-Bayridge, and her name is LISA OSANIC. LISA, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Before I go any further, let me thank you for your service to the community by sitting on City Council. And you have sat there for almost 15 years.
That's true, since 2006 election.
Now, question is, what is the passion that drives you to continue to sit around that horseshoe?
Well, back in 2005 is when there were a lot of trees around the city that were being cut down for development. And it became apparent no matter where around the city you were driving. And the city at that time was just starting to think about bringing in a tree bylaw. And at the bottom of our street, there's a gigantic forest. When we moved into the house, at that time, we were told that it was all conservation area. But then I found out that year that actually it's not, that it's zoned for a future development at some point when the urban growth boundary gets extended out. And that's what got me involved with looking into municipal politics and, you know, what the zoning is. And the election was coming up in 2006, so I decided to run.
Now, what's the passion that keeps you running every time?
Well, so far, the forest is still intact. But, you know, like once you get into, municipal politics, then there's one topic after another. Like I describe our job as a city councillor to be a jack of all trades, master of none.
Right.
If you look at my email inbox, there's just so many topics, and like you just get so involved with the city in all aspects of every department really that the city covers. There's some question that comes to you as a councillor, and then you go to city staff and get the answer. And so many different bylaws, like bylaws is always one topic that people are always questioning, or they need help with, or they need a bylaw officer out, or filing a bylaw complaint, but also traffic. Like it's just so varied. There's just so many topics, and just keeping up to date with all your constituents' questions and problems, trying to help them solve their problems, that sometimes it's hard to get to the things that brought you into politics in the first place. Like for me was giving more protection for trees, or trees can then, work into, the woodlands and, the animals in the woodlands, when beavers are killed, when turtles are killed, it just, leads into directions that you never even thought of when you first ran in the election. And there's still things to work on. And there's still a big to-do list to try to get finished by the next election. That's for sure, especially with COVID.
Well, let's go back a little bit. You grew up in Brampton, I read somewhere, and you got your Bachelor of Science degree at the University of Waterloo and your MBA at Queen's. And in 1994, you moved to Kingston. Now, was it the MBA program that got you coming here, or was there some other reason why you came to Kingston and relocated here?
Right. So I graduated from Queen's in 1993, and then I moved back to like the Greater Toronto area. I was living in Etobicoke, but then I met my future husband at the time who was working in Toronto. And then shortly after we started going out, he announced that he was actually going to move to Kingston. And I said to him at that, I go, well, I just moved from Kingston. He was also a Queen's graduate, but he graduated from Queen's before I actually started at Queen's, before I knew him. And that's what I said. I said, I just came from Kingston and now you're going. And so anyway, so then in 1994, I got a job here and came to Kingston as a resident, which is very much different, Dave, than being a student. When you're a student, your life is just the Queen's campus. And maybe if you venture out to Loblaws at the Kingston Center, you don't go much further than that. And then when you live here and you can actually spend summers here, then you're like, wow, this is the best town ever. For a person who loves summer and, you know, Kingston's surrounded by water, Kingston's the best.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. So it's you, your husband, 2 kids, 4 cats, and a horse.
Yes.
All living under one roof.
Yeah. Well, no, the horse was always at a farm.
2001 is when you started working at the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. What is it that you do there?
I'm an executive assistant for an IT director at the Ministry of Health. And so one of the for the Ministry of Health, working on all like the online booking system for the vaccines, or, you know, getting, being able to go online and seeing, you know, what your COVID test results were. We have IT staff in Toronto, but they also at the Ministry of Health have IT staff in Kingston.
We talked about why you decided to run in the first place back in 2006. I would guess that coming in, you would have some expectations as to what the job would entail. And did those expectations get met?
The one thing I always like, okay, so when you're going through an election, you know, you'll write out, these are all the things I was just able to achieve over the last 4 years. And then you also then say, and these are the things I want to work on. But it's amazing, all the things that get thrown at us, like big issues thrown at us that we never predicted that, you know, would come at us. So like back in 2006, we never could have predicted that in 2007, we would have a gigantic revote about the like the Kingston Regional Entertainment Center back then, right? The K-Rock Center, now the Leon Center. You know, like we did not predict in 2006 that we would actually be voting whether to continue on with that project or not. Or like last year, the big thing was what we were going to do with Bell Park and the people that were living, you know, like in Bell Park. So like you have your to-do list, but you always get new things added, new issues added that come at you that then end up taking a lot of your time because they are big issues that must be decided on.
And I guess there are a lot of folks on the outside looking in saying, why does City Council take so long with this issue or that issue? From our perspective, it should be something that you would do right away. Bell Park being one that I think a lot of people talked a lot about, and it seemed to drag on and drag on. And I know that you guys were working hard on it, but what was it? Can you give me just a brief idea as to what was it that made this process extend itself longer than maybe you had expected it to?
Mm-hmm. You have to view all sides, right? You have to give everyone an equal voice. And sometimes like we do think, okay, like this is how I'm going to vote. This is the way I see an issue. And then, you know, like that's why at all our council meetings and committee meetings, we allow delegations, and people are always sending us emails as well with information, or you could just even get a telephone call. And someone in, you know, one of those means of communication will give us some piece of information that we didn't know, that we had never considered. And before we make our decision, we have to be able to justify it, you know, if not publicly, like at the meeting, you have to know, like inside, ethically, you know, morally, am I going to be able to sleep well tonight with my decision? And, you know, and so sometimes you have to go against the grain in the decision, not related to Bell Park, but just in other big issues that we've had. You always have to be true to yourself. You have to live with yourself. And, and sometimes, like we think we're going to make a decision that night. And then with new information being presented, we defer it. City council is definitely, known to, defer a decision because, there's some point has arisen that we just need more information before we make our final decision. It's really hard to go back to correct a decision that's made if we make the wrong decision or we realize we should have considered some piece of information that wasn't given to us. It's so hard. We actually can't go back for a year to bring it back to council. And, then it's like 2/3 majority. So we have to make sure we're making our decision based on the best information. And then also, like, even if we have like full-time jobs during the day, Dave, that cuts down on our chance to, really sometimes see all sides of an issue. And then, a few minutes before the council meeting, someone will present that and you're seeing it for the very first time. So those are the reasons why we will sometimes defer out a decision until we get more information back.
Do you have a sense as to how many hours a week you spend on council matters?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny, this new feature in maybe it's Office 365 or so, it sometimes gives us a little recap of, hey, like these are all the things you were working on this week, this little thing of artificial intelligence coming by. But like for meetings, usually like at least 10 hours a week of meetings, and we're on email. I'm on email every single day, and planning, like it being a city councillor, it's a lot of hours. Like you can't really take a week off. It's hard to even take a weekend off. You have to really catch up, and depending on, what meetings you have for the next week, right? That weekend before, you have to start downloading all the documents and reading them to know what questions to ask staff, right? Because even at council meetings, we're only allowed 5 minutes. And in that 5 minutes is when we can ask questions to staff, but also to give our viewpoint on how we're going to vote on an issue. 5 minutes is not a long time. And so we try to use time ahead of the meeting to try to get some of our questions cleared up so that we know exactly what to say in the 5 minutes. Now, not all decisions take a lot of time, but for those really big issues, that's when, 5 minutes can go by really fast, and you want to try to make the most of the 5 minutes you do have that you're allowed to speak. And planning committee meetings, they can take a lot of time ahead of time to try to, ask questions and try to work your way around the issue so that you're kind of have a sense of how you're going to vote and what questions to ask the applicant that night and what your concerns are going into the meeting.
You mentioned committees before, and some of them that you have sat on over the years. What has been your favorite committee?
I do like planning committee because that's my chance to try to save as many trees as possible. And especially if a development is going to take down an entire woodland, then I want to be in there, being able to ask as many questions as possible and seeing which way we can go around it.
Okay.
So planning committee, but I also like for the fun of it, I also like the arts, recreation, community policy meeting because of the parks and recreation aspect. That's when we get to see, if we're going to have a new aquatic center, or if we're going to have more tennis courts, more pickleball courts, like recreation, sports. That's my cup of tea. So that's my fun meeting.
Or a place where there's more trees.
Yeah, that's true. Right?
Let's turn our attention to the past year. So it's been almost a full year since the pandemic hit Kingston and the rest of the world. And
that's right.
I'm curious to know, once this thing started to develop, what was the main focus of City Council?
I think the main focus of City Council was to provide a means to carry on our meetings so that we could still carry on the business of the city, but being safe, working remotely, working from our house. And so I have to give all the kudos to our staff, especially in the IT department and in our in the clerk's department, because they suddenly had to put all of our meetings online. They had to learn the Zoom technology, the Cisco WebEx technology, so we could still have our in-camera meetings, and it being seamless, moving to the online environment. And I know that was really hard for them. It was a lot of things to figure out so that members of the public would still be able to give presentations. We did have to stop our committee meetings, I think, for 2 weeks, until we could actually figure out the process. But our council meetings continued on, and it was great. And now, since we're doing all our meetings from Zoom, I just love it so much. It's just so convenient. It really is. And like when I was saying, like before the break about our meetings, like some of our meetings on planning committee can go until midnight. It can go until 1 o'clock in the morning. I think our record is 1:30 in the morning. Back in 2007, when we were preparing for the vote on the Leon Center, if we were going to go ahead with the construction, we actually went back in camera after a council meeting that night, and it went until 1:25 in the morning. And so no one ever sees that, right? But like try, like walking out of City Hall, finding your car, having to drive home. You're always wired after a council meeting, right? Mm-hmm. You just can't go to sleep right away. And then you have to wake up for work the next morning. So having these meetings online, like we have still gone till 12:30 over the summer at planning committee meetings. But, like once the meeting's over, you just hit leave meeting on your computer. You're home, like the kitchen's right here for dinner, and you can be asleep, very, very quickly. So it's so convenient that way.
One of the things I'm interested in is that once this got rolling and you had to deal with different issues related to COVID-19, the cooperation amongst the councillors around the Horseshoe versus cooperation with other municipalities in our area, and then take it up to the province and the federal level. Describe what kind of cooperation you have or don't have with those different organizations.
Sure. Well, one thing we did right away was that we did our delegated authority to our CAO so that she could, Lanny Hurdle, so that Lanny could handle a lot of the decisions that otherwise would have to call, a council meeting actually to decide. So we gave her delegated authority under the Emergency Act to make a lot of those quick decisions. And we were definitely in tune with what the other municipalities were doing. All the other municipalities were going online as well. Some of them were using different platforms. For Kingston, we were really seamless. And, and Brian, the mayor, right? Brian Patterson, Mayor Patterson, he was really good with keeping us updated as well. We had so many email communications, and so we were in the loop all the time. And so that part worked really well, Dave.
I would imagine that council had to come up with different regulations, amend the way that you do certain things, not only just the IT of meeting on a regular basis, but the stuff that would impact constituents directly. I'm curious to know what kind of feedback you would have gotten from the people in the city based upon some of the things you may have changed to deal with the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. One thing I like for the past year, not so much right now, although it might hit when the online booking system for vaccinations come out next week. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people came to us as counselors because they couldn't get through to the other levels of government. So we were fielding a lot of questions that really would have been like decisions made by the province, decisions made by the federal government. And they were coming to us because they knew our email address or they knew our telephone number, or because we're very easy to be Googled. And then you can get all that information in one fast click, and we'd be right there at 6 o'clock, to answer the phone when we got the telephone. So like in May, when some of the restrictions started to lift, and some businesses could reopen, a lot of the phone calls and inquiries from businesses that really would have been at the provincial level were coming to us to answer. And we were then giving it to our bylaw staff. And even though it wasn't really our bylaw staff, because it was, whatever the province was saying at their 1 p.m. press release, where people were then phoning us and saying, does this apply to my business? Am I allowed to open? Like, what can you tell me? And then I just felt so bad for our bylaw staff because they didn't know much either at, just by hearing what was announced at the 1 o'clock press conference. But then they were the ones that had to run around and try to find out, how to get back to each business. And they did an admirable job of doing that for, something where they were really thrown in there. Like, that's how I can describe what happened to bylaw. They were thrown into the situation with like the information that everyone was just hearing in the press. And yet they had to then, decide, okay, yeah, I think this applies to you. You're allowed to be open. If you do open, we won't be giving you a ticket. No, for this business, no, you're not in that category. I don't classify you in that category. We'll check with the police just to check to see if their interpretation is that way too, but for right now, no, you better just stay closed. Like the poor bylaw staff, they were really thrown in there.
Still enjoy doing the job as counselor?
Yes, yes, because there's never a dull day. It's like always different things, always different things. And it's just so varied. Like you never get bored being a counselor because there's just so many different topics, and you have a notebook and, you go through many notebooks, and it's just all the different issues. It's just all the different issues. There's so much going on, and you can be on as many committees as you want to, as many committees as time permits. And all of those committees always have different topics, presented at them. It's amazing just how involved at the municipal level, you can be. And sometimes that makes it more difficult to stay on top of the worldwide issues or the national, because there's only 24 hours in a day. And especially on a day where a committee meeting can go until midnight, it's like, wow, I never watched the news all day today. I hope I didn't miss something.
Now, being nosy, do you plan on running in the next election?
I think so at this point, because unfortunately, COVID, it made us stop a lot of plans that we had, like we had a huge, like $8 million shortfall, like last August. That's when we were having a revenue shortfall of $8 million. A lot of now provincial and federal money has come in that helped alleviate that shortfall. But as far as work goes, like a lot of plans got were deferred for a year. And so some things aren't going to be able to be finished by 2022. And so that's like, okay, some things might have to continue on. So I'll give you an example, Dave, right? So I would love to be able to end like the municipal political thing that I'm doing on the note that we could have a high volume, low cost spay-neuter facility in Kingston. That is what, I got involved working towards for the last, 8 years at least, maybe 9 years now. And things were going good until COVID. Like we had a mobile spay-neuter van that came from the Welland SPCA in the fall of 2019. It was able to spay and neuter 100 cats over one weekend. And we had another 100 cats on a waiting list to come out in the spring. We had it booked for last April. It was going to be at the Rideau Heights Community Center. And then COVID struck. And it's like, okay, we can't use the community center. We've shut down the community centers. Okay, let's look at Center 70. Okay, Center 70 will work. And then April, everything was closed. And now it's like, are we even going to get the van back? You know, when the Kingston Humane Society, when they can start working on fundraisers again, you know, can they start to raise money for a permanent, you know, facility at the Kingston Humane Society for low cost, high volume spay neuter facility. I don't really want to, you know, give it up until we get to that point. And we've just lost a year with that. So that's the way things are right now. Of course, no matter what election it is, municipal, provincial, we have no idea when the masks are going to be coming off. We have no idea when people will feel comfortable answering the front door again. You know, so they just elected a representative, you know, in 2020 for the provincial for the federal Conservative Party. And they had to do the entire campaign as a virtual campaign. So in 2022, you know, like, is that when there's going to be another provincial election? You know, what's going to happen with the federal election? We know that the municipal election is going to be in the year 2022. To do an election, you knock on doors, right? Like, that's, people want to see you. Now with COVID, what type of spin is on there? It's like, no, like you could actually maybe knock on all the doors in your district in 1 month because no one's going to be answering the door. Everyone will have a sign, just leave your pamphlet right here. We'll phone you if we want you. You know, like, no one knows what the future will hold for elections and when it will actually become safe again to answer a door, to talk to somebody. We're not there yet. That's why I'm happy there's no election in 2021.
Lots of issues to deal with as we move forward. So I want to thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us, and all the best.
Great. Thanks so much, Dave. This was fun. Thank you.
Theme music for the program is Stasis Oasis, a tune written and performed by Kingston musician Tim Aylesworth. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions about any of our episodes, please send a note to the Kingstonian Podcast Facebook page. This is Dave Cunningham from Kingston, Ontario. Thank you for listening. Until next time.